Greetings, BookTube. This is Eric, and back with yet another video. And right now what you're looking at is my horror shelves, which aren't greatly lit, and I apologize for that. But what I'm going to do now is the horror tag that's going around. And yes, I do have 2 copies of Rebecca sitting there. There's more than a few of these books that I have multiple copies of. That's what happens when you find them in thrift shops and at library sales. Okay, so how and when did I get into horror? Let's start with reading. So when I was in elementary school, I was reading a lot of stuff, including fantasy. And right there you can see Robert Lynn Aspirin and Lynn Abbey. They were married at the time, and their son went to elementary school with me, and he told me about his dad's books. And so did my cousin. This was about 5th or 6th grade. And so I picked these up, and these were kind of dark fantasy. When I hit the 7th grade, one of my best friends, his father was a writer for this, the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. So started learning about Lovecraft and started getting into horror from there. To be honest, I was very much an action junkie. But that same friend for Christmas, when I was in 9th grade, gave me this book, the Lovecraft compilation, Blood-Curdling Tales of the Macabre. You can see this is a pretty well-worn book. I've owned it since 1987, somewhere around there. Okay, but the first horror novel that really grabbed me was also when I was in 9th grade, and that was The Stand. And this is my copy from that late 80s era. Standing in line to register for my 9th grade classes, my best friend starts telling me about this book, and of course I had to get it. So there's The Stand. I'm going to put that right up there because we're going to be talking about that again in a moment. So, and of course my computer screen just went. What horror-related goodness can you expect from my channel? Well, yeah, there we go. I talk about books, all kinds of books. This is my current horror shelf. There's all kinds of stuff around here. When I'm not talking about westerns or crime novels, I'll be probably talking about horror and science fiction. So, and I do hope to read a lot of these at some point. And because of the cart that's in the way down here, you're not going to be able to see the lower ones. But there are some compilations up here. And yes, there is a sheet that covers the books so that the sun doesn't get them. Okay. Do you have any favorite themes or subgenres? Well, I showed you The Stand. I'm going to show you Swan Song. And I'm going to show you the 2 books that inspired both of those. Earth Abides by George R. Stewart, and The Last Babylon by Pat Frank. And then there's also, of course, I Am Legend in the mix. My copy is down there somewhere. So I do have a fondness for the Holocaust or apocalyptic genre, part of the horror genre. An underrated horror novel. So this is going to be controversial because it's not completely horror, but The Chinatown Death Cloud Peril by Paul Maumont, which is a horror story in that there is a lot of Lovecraftian stuff that goes on, and Lovecraft's funeral plays a role in the book. And the main characters are the writer of Doc Savage and the writer of The Shadow. It's really good stuff. Check it out. The sequel wasn't quite as good, but I really did like that one. An overrated horror novel or author. I'll give you an overrated movie that I think is a horror movie, The Breakfast Club. John Hughes was the basis for The Bad Guy and The Lost Boys. And that movie's just awful, awful, awful if you strip away all of the nostalgia. You've got a criminal. You've got a smart kid that only gets treated as human if he does everybody's work. Who's tried to kill himself. You have a jock who has committed a sexual assault and gotten detention for it. And you get the arty, weird girl who probably would read these books that only is acceptable once she conforms. So, there you go. Recommend 3 of your favorite horror novels. Okay, so this is going to be kind of weird. This guy, James Hines, wrote kind of literary, college-based horror and suspense tales. I don't have the other one, Kings of Infinite Space. I enjoyed all of them, and I recommend all of them. I don't have the novel I want to talk about next, so I'm going to show you. Here's Krista Faust's Money Shot in a Hood Town. These are both crime novels, but she wrote a great Nightmare on Elm Street installment that's well worth tracking down. I'm still looking for a copy. And then finally, Todd Spencer Browning, or William Browning Spencer. Todd Spencer was somebody that was a local person. Resonating with Monsters. This is a surreal take on the horrors of the McJob and Lovecraft's monsters. Great stuff. Okay. Recommend a book for someone who's new to the genre. Well, if you haven't read Paperbacks from Hell, you should get on that. This will lead you to all kinds of crazy fun stuff. You could go to The Stand, which is a great Stephen King novel. You could go to Resume with Monsters. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning. Earth Abides. I do want another shout out for Earth Abides. Definitely worth the read. Not as well remembered as it should be, and it really was a game changer for the genre. Okay. A book to film adaptations. Well, Reanimator. Reanimator's a great one. It's a classic. It takes the story and expands it to the modern day, and it just works. So, Reanimator. Discover new horror books. Well, YouTube podcasts, Facebook, talking to friends, stuff like Paperbacks from Hell, all of those things lead me to new horror books. Last horror book I bought, I don't really remember, so I'll show you one that I got in the last several months that I still haven't gotten to. Anthology White House Horrors. That says it all. And what's a horror book that's at the top of my wish list? Well, let's look at my wish list. So here's what I have on Amazon as my top of my wish list. Search for Joseph Tully and Piper, both of which were discoveries via Paperback from Hell. Okay, it wants me to now tag some people. So, I don't know, Paperback Junkie, if you get a moment, please do your version of this tag. Otherwise, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.